I'll be your driver. Got some safety concerns or rules, whatever we need to go over. Please, no standing while the trolley's in motion. That's the big one. I'll ring the bell once, like that. When we're about to get underway, and I'll ring it again when it is safe to exit the trolley. No smoking or consumption of alcohol while on board. That's state law, not mine. And personal belongings, body parts inside at all times. Can't go back for your hat or your hand. And just a word of warning, the wind is kind of high today along the bay, so if we make any turns from like King Street onto Castillo there, the wind's going to give a good gust. So you want to hang on to those hats especially today. Now we are going to head over to number 2 here, pick up some folks maybe. But about a half-mile north of us is Florida School for the Deaf and Blind. That was started in 1883 by the Florida legislature, and one of the more famous students Charles. He went to school there from age 15 years of age. And about 2 miles north of us here, up on 1, is Fort Mose. That was started in 1783. That was a free black settlement. Any runaway slave that made it down here was declared a free man if he joined the military and converted to Catholicism. Now this is stop 2. This is the US 1 Welcome Center. You're going to be in town tonight, folks. Ghost and Gravestones. We've been voted the best in St. Augustine, 3rd year in a row for ghost tours. And that does sell out. We had 11, I think, 10 or 11 Friday night. But since this is the Halloween season, that's what happens. Welcome aboard, new folks. My name is Riff. I'll be your driver and tour guide. I just want to give you a heads up. Some of the stops are closed today. Well, for now anyway, 13, 16, and 17. That's the Lightner. I can drop you off in front of the Lightner, but I can't drop you off in the Lightner if you want to go there. Well, actually, I can't stop there. I can maybe stop at 14. Stop at the Cathedral if you want to go to Lightner. And the oldest house is also closed. That is underwater, as is the Castillo. So if you want to go to the Castillo, I would suggest you get off at stop 5 and swim across the parking lot, or wait until low tide. Because I went by there and that water is high. You're about 3 feet above sea level right now, folks. If I were to take you down to the fort and you were to step off, you would be at sea level. That water is high. Now I'm going to start our tour here with the St. Augustine story. We are the oldest continuously occupied European settlement in the United States, 42 years older than Jamestown, Virginia, 55 years older than Plymouth, Massachusetts. That all started when Ponce de Leon came over here with Christopher Columbus on his second voyage in 1502. So he got a kind of a lay of the land with that run. In 1508, he was named the first governor of Puerto Rico. And those people, the natives of Puerto Rico, told Ponce about this eternal fountain of youth that was supposed to be located on the island of Bimini. So he set off in search of that island in 1513. He missed it, ended up somewhere here. 30.8 degrees according to his logbook, which is actually just a little bit north of us, just north of the Volano Beach. Which that intersection back there will take you to the Volano Bridge. Now, he didn't discover Florida. A lot of people think he did. He discovered the Gulf Stream. And he claimed Florida, and he named it. He claimed it in all of North America in the name of Spain. And he named it Pascua de Flores, after the Easter season of flowers in Spain. Now, there were a couple attempts to colonize this area, but they all failed. So when King Philip II of Spain was told that there was a colony here on his land, he was told that in 1564. It was called Fort Caroline, located in current-day Jacksonville. He was enraged because it was a French fort, not Spanish. And even worse, it was a Protestant fort, not Catholic. So they went at it like cats and dogs back then. So he got Pedro Menendez de Avilés. On September 8th, 1565, this is where Pedro landed here, and the king gave Pedro 3 goals. First was eliminate that Fort Caroline, get those French off my land. And the second was establish a permanent Spanish colony over here. And the third was to Christianize or Catholicize those Native Americans. So that's where he landed. And as soon as he landed, he sent parts up to Fort Caroline. He captured that lightly defended fort because 250 of those native soldiers saw the Spanish sailing south on the Atlantic, heading down this way, and they got their ships ready. They were going to attack the Spanish by sea. Well, they did that during the beginning of a hurricane, which was not a good idea, obviously. They were beached about 16 miles south of here, those French soldiers. No weapons, no supplies. Well, after capturing Fort Caroline, Menendez marched south, for 16 miles south of here. He captured those 250 soldiers, asked them the most important question of their lives: are you Catholic? When they replied they were not, they were Protestants. Well, that was the wrong answer. He marched them 2 by 2 behind those sand dunes and slit their throats, threw their bodies into the bay. Now this led to the Bay of Dancing Dolphins. Isn't that a pretty name? Nice, easy-going name. Well, I got renamed Matanzas Bay. Matanzas is Spanish for massacre or slaughter. Now the Protestants got their revenge 21 years later when Sir Francis Drake sailed into the bay with 2,000 of his privateers. Now the difference between a pirate and a privateer is sanctioned by the crown. A pirate is not. So they were pretty much sanctioned pirates. Well, they sailed into this bay, burnt the city and the fort to the ground, and sent all the citizens running over into the river there, passed into the swamps. Now, also in 1668, a very famous pirate named Robert Searles, he invaded the town, burned it and the fort to the ground, and he killed 60 citizens. And he vowed to come back and make this a pirate town. Well, that led to St. Augustine becoming a presidio, or a walled city. Now, there were only 3 in town. Now, the Cubo line started here at the fort, or at the bay, and it ran all the way to the river, to the west, the San Sebastian River. That Cubo line was the northern defense line. Palm logs were set up on the outside and inside, filled in with dirt, and Spanish bayonet would be planted on top of that dirt. Spanish bayonet is a form of cactus. And I'm going to show you some Spanish bayonet just past this stop sign straight ahead of us here. And it kind of looks, the leaves or fronds kind of look like bayonets. Now, along with the Cubo line, which ran straight across here to our right, the Rosario line intersected it right here, about where the stop sign is, and it ran south along Cordova Street, which we're facing, all the way to the San Sebastian River to the south. Now the river kind of doglegs, so that's how it's able to intersect 2 lines. Now, along with the Rosario and the Cubo line, we had 9 to 14 of these redoubts or fortifications. This is the Santo Domingo redoubt. You can see the cutouts where the cannons would be placed. And this also would be surrounded by a wet moat. You can see where that moat would be there. So you weren't getting into this city unless you were invited, folks. Now I'm going to jump ahead a couple hundred years in history, since we are driving by this parking deck here. Excuse me, folks, I got a little sinus thing going on. Alright. This was the site of the San Marco Hotel, the first Grand Hotel in St. Augustine. Built in 1884 by Isaac Cruft from Boston. It burned down in 1897. It was 5 stories high, 260 feet long, 131-foot wooden spires raised into the sky. You can see this hotel 16 miles out to sea. And this hotel, I've seen postcards of it, and it was advertised as being on St. Augustine's highest elevation. But you're about 6 feet right now. But I guess with those high tides, that would maybe make a difference. I don't know. It had Otis elevators, running water, steam heat, partial electricity. Now, Henry Flagler came down here to honeymoon with his second wife after his first wife had died. And he made his fortune with Rockefeller and Standard Oil. They were the richest men on the planet. His stock dividends were $150,000 a month alone. So he had a lot of money, kind of played out the oil game, was looking to invest his money in some new venture. And when he stayed down here, he was in the winter. It was in the winter. So he saw that the weather was good year-round, and the land was cheap. So that's what he ended up doing, and I'll get a little more into Henry Flagler later on in the tour. Right now we're coming up onto the Visitor Information Center. This is stop number 3. This is made out of coquina. It's that building straight ahead of us there with the red tile roof. It was built in 1938 by the WPA. There's a small museum and gift shop in there. We also have a ticket booth in there. And we can discount tickets up to 30%, folks. If you see any attractions here, if you haven't picked up any tickets for additional attractions, we can discount them up to 30% in there. Or any of our ticket booths, actually. This is stop 3, the VIC. Onward. Now, these 2 palm trees that are off to your right in front of that Best Western, that's a sable palm. And it is the Florida state tree. Now, back in the early 1700s, the Scott-Irish came down here. They were the original cowboys of Florida. And they would make a swamp cabbage out of the hearts of those palm trees. You can buy that in can form now, by the way, folks. And they were called crackers. They carried 18-foot-long bullwhips to keep their herds in place. And the snapping or cracking of that sound through the air, well, the Spanish called them craqueros. So the English translation is obviously crackers from that. Now in 1821, the United States purchased the Florida Territory from Spain for $5 million just in time for the yellow fever epidemic. Yellow fever killed about 1/3 of the St. Augustine population. We had a lot of non-Catholics coming into town at that time. So if you were Catholic, you could be buried in the only cemetery in town, the Talamata. If not, there was no place to bury you. So the United States had to scramble. They purchased this piece of land coming up here on the right. This is the public burying ground on the right here, otherwise known as the Huguenot Cemetery. And that's about as big as my backyard was back up at north. And you would ask, how could you get 1/3 of the city's population in there? Well, folks, if you buried the bodies 25 deep, it's easy. And if you come down here at night, you'll see all these ghost hunters standing around those walls. They're ghost meters or whatever those meters are called. And St. Augustine is a pretty haunted town. I guess that Sci-Fi Channel, that Ghost Hunters show, they love coming down here. They always get positive hits when they come down here. Now off to the left, this is the Authentic Old Drugstore. That's an exclusive stop of Old Town Trolley. And in 1886, T.W. Spicinger came down here. He was a pharmacist from up north. Now, back in those days, you didn't need to go see your doctor, get a prescription, and go to Walgreens and wait 15 or 20 minutes. You just went to Spicinger, told him what ailed you, whether it was the consumption, which was tuberculosis, or a headache. Didn't matter. He'd mix you up the same potion, usually. Mineral water, grain alcohol, and opium. Now, it obviously wouldn't cure anything that you had, but you would definitely feel better. That opium would kick in after a couple doses. It was great. This is the Talamata Cemetery on the right. And right in front of the cemetery, you look over the roof line there of the love tree. That live oak tree is the love tree. And there is a palm tree growing out of the trunk of that live oak tree there. It said, if you kiss your loved one under that tree, you'll be with them forever. What do I know? This is the old drugstore. This is a free attraction to St. Augustine and an exclusive stop for Old Town Trolley. Oh, that was stop 4, by the way. Now we're going up to the city gates, right about where that red train is. Now the city gates were an addition to the Kubo line. It was the only northern entrance into or from town. Those gates were closed at dusk, locked actually, and unlocked at dawn. If you were not inside town by dusk, you got locked out. You got to sleep with the alligators, rattlesnakes, mosquitoes, and possible corpse or two. So that was pretty good incentive to get in town. Now, if you are into ghost hunting, and you take one of those tours, right outside here, there's a little girl named Elizabeth. And there's Colleen there. She can hook you up with some discount tickets if you're in the market for. Also, Jeff here straight ahead of us, he can hook you up also. Good morning, good morning. This is stop 5, folks. Getting off, we're on here. Enter or exit as you were climbing a ladder. Use those handrails. This is stop 5, north end of St. George Street. So the exit for the Pirate Treasure Museum and temporarily the Castillo. Good. Do they still have to swim across the parking lot to get to the fort? That's pretty deep. I know, I went by there earlier. Good to go? All right, here we go, folks. Thank you. Now, the Pirate Treasure, well, let me finish telling you about Elizabeth here. Elizabeth died of the yellow fever in 1821, and her ghost, she was the daughter of the gatekeeper here in St. Augustine. And if you come by here, I have experienced Elizabeth's presence right outside the city gates. She's, since she was only 7 years old, she's not a harmful spirit or anything, but it is kind of weird.
There she is.
Okay, we'll see you.
There's Lizzie. She's playing with us.
Yeah, it's kind of weird to be tickled by a 7-year-old ghost. Very strange. Now, the Pirate Treasure Museum is going to be off on the right here. This is one of the newest attractions, St. Augustine. There's the only pirate treasure chest on display in the world here. One of only 3 Jolly Roger flags, authentic flags. There's a interactive Disney Imagineering display in there. Johnny Depp's sword from Pirates of the Caribbean. Putting a watchtower in here at the Colonial Quarter, which was the Spanish Quarter. And a blacksmith and gun shop, or gunsmith shop, we're going in here. It's going to range from the 15th to 18th centuries. That should be open in the spring of next year. Now off to the left, oh man, fort looks good now. They must have brought the street sweeper in. At 17, the fort looks pretty good. A little bit of water on the entrance here, but where we drop people off is all dry now. Now, folks, if you look off to the left, that is the Atlantic Ocean out there. That was not there until the 1940s. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers dredged that up. And that is our own private entrance into the Atlantic Ocean, and this guy should not be parked here. Folks, this is stop 7, Bayfront stop. If you are exiting off here, please exit to the right only, as I'm not by the curb. All right. Now you're going to notice that these streets, these side streets leading into the center of town are narrow for a few reasons. First, in the summertime, it channels or funnels sea breezes into town. Sorry? Okay, everybody's good? All right. Funnel sea breezes into the center of town, acts as a cooling effect. And it also made marching enemy troops into town rather difficult. Now you're going to see a lot of different architecture down here. This building on the left, see that door just past the lamppost? This is Spanish architecture here. The Spanish would have their door leading to the courtyard and a balcony looking over the street. This right here also. The British, on the other hand, would have their front doors leading directly into the home. And their second story would be recessed, kind of like a deck. Also, the British introduced glass for windows and chimneys and fireplaces. The Spanish would just build a fire pit. They'd have a fire pit on the main floor, do all their cooking and heating from there, and they would cover their windows with rayos, that boards off to the left there. Didn't do anything for the mosquitoes, but it did allow the smoke to escape from the fires. Now, folks, this is stop number 8, middle of St. George Street at Hippolyta. Now, you can exit either side here if you're getting off once I ring the bell. You got the oldest wooden schoolhouse and St. Photios Shrine off to the right, Cathedral Basilica and Pennapeck House off to the left. Now, normally all the churches are open for free viewing. However, our services are being conducted today, so most of the churches are closed unless you attend service. Now we're entering the Menorcan section of town. Menorca is an island southeast of Spain. And the Menorcans are brought over here as indentured servants to work an indigo plantation about 60 miles south of here at New Smyrna Beach. Now that indigo plantation failed, and they were stranded down there. Father Camps, who was a priest from up here, he went down there, rescued them, brought them back up here, and the British gave them this section of town to live in. If it wasn't for the Menorcans, we couldn't say we were the oldest continuously occupied European settlement. We still have Menorcan descendants here in St. Augustine to this day. Now this Cracker House, a good example of Cracker House is Scarlett O'Hara's here. Up on the right at the corner. The Crackers would have an elevated foundation, a regular front porch, and they used tin sheets for shingles. Now we're entering the Gilded Age of St. Augustine now. Enter Henry Flagler. Gilded Age is after the Civil War and before the Great Depression. Now Henry Flagler, as I said, had a lot of money. He helped the Cathedral Basilica rebuild when it caught fire. He was the son of a Presbyterian minister from New York, so he was a pretty religious guy. Didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't swear. And he approached Methodists. They had a piece of land that he wanted to build a second hotel on. Made a deal with them. He said, I will build you a brand new church in 1 year. This Grace United Methodist Church is a result of that. If you give me that piece of land that I want to build my second hotel on. They agreed, obviously. That is made out of poured concrete. $85,000 for a $4,000 piece of land. That was a pretty good deal for them and a pretty good deal for Henry because that's where he wanted to build the Alcazar, and that's pretty good. Now the Baptists were next in line. They asked Henry to build them a church also. He said, I'm not going to build you a church because you don't have anything that I want. But I'm a nice guy. I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'll give you the land if you make the church worth at least $10,000 and you build it within 2 years. And you don't put a bell in the bell tower. Ancient City Baptist Church, 1895, right on the right here. That's a beautiful church also. Now, for all the money Henry had, he couldn't buy off personal tragedy in his life. He had a daughter named Jenny Louise, his only daughter. She married a wealthy New Yorker named Benedict. And they had a child, Marjorie. Well, Marjorie only lived to be a few hours old. Now, this was Henry's only granddaughter. Devastated Henry. He summoned Jenny Louise to come down to St. Augustine to recuperate with the Flaglers at the family mansion down here. She got on the Benedict yacht. He said, I'll meet you in Charleston, South Carolina Harbor. Henry standing on the box, sees the Benedict yacht pull into full view, and witnessed the flag go from full staff to half staff on the yacht. Then he had expired within sight of her father at the Charleston harbors. So not only in 1 month did he lose his only granddaughter, but he lost his only daughter. He came back here to St. Augustine and had all the work stopped that he was doing, and he had this church built in Jenny Louise's honor 361 days later. This is also made out of poured concrete. Now you can imagine one of the wealthiest men on the planet. He's not going to skimp on his daughter's church. And he did not here, folks. He spared no expense. I'm not going to ring the bell here because I think they have services going. But ding ding, if you're getting off here, this is stop 9. If you're getting off here, you can exit to the right. But you can imagine that the wealthiest man in the world, he's not going to go cheap on his daughter's church. It was modeled after St. Mark's. It's got a copper dome, goes 150 feet up into the sky, another 20-foot Greek Orthodox cross, and it is amazingly beautiful. The 5,000 pipe organ inside there. Beautiful church. Okay, folks, here we go. Ding, ding. Now, off to the left is Flagler College. It was originally the Hotel Ponce de Leon. That big tall smokestack there was built for Thomas Edison's oil-fired DC generators. Those generators are now into the Smithsonian. Edison personally came down here, wired this whole building with electricity, light bulbs, the whole ball of wax. This was a seasonal hotel, and cost about, seasonal being only open during the winter months, and it would cost in today's money about $250,000 to stay here. You need to be on New York Social Register to stay here. Also, we had 5 presidents that were residents here for a while, the last being LBJ. Now this recessed area back here is the dining hall. Flagler brought George Maynard down here to paint the murals. He painted the Library of Congress in Washington. Well, speaking of Washington, this building had electricity 3 years before the White House did. He also brought Louis Comfort Tiffany down here. Tiffany installed over 70 stained glass windows in that, mainly in that dining hall. And 20 years ago, the insurance company came down here to appraise those windows and put their value at over $130 million. They are now covered in bulletproof glass. Now, Henry had a problem once he had this gorgeous hotel built, was how to get all his distinguished guests down here in fashion. He bought the rail line from Jacksonville to St. Augustine, improved it from narrow to standard gauge, built a rail depot a few blocks from town, paved all these streets in out of his own pocket in asphalt. So there was a short horse and carriage ride from the rail station to the front of the Ponce de Leon. Now off to the right here is Markland House. Now this was the home of the Andrew Anderson family. They were here before the Civil War, and part of the land that Henry obtained to build the Ponce de Leon was gotten from the Andersons here. They had orange groves that ran from the bay all the way to the river. Over 40 acres of orange groves. And since the Andersons were Presbyterian also, actually the elder Dr. Anderson was Flagler's personal physician for a while too. So they got along pretty well. Now a lot of people don't know that Henry Flagler continued that rail line all the way down to Key West. He was passionate about this railroading thing, and he saw great things happening for Key West when the Panama Canal was going to be opened up. He saw Key West as being the largest seaport on the Atlantic coast. So he actually did run that line all the way to Key West. Unfortunately, it got blown out in the hurricane in 1935. But Henry was able to ride that line in 1912, the year before he died. Now, if you look off to the right here, the DuPont family, well, these are original offices off to the left. You look off to the right, that medallion there between the first and second building, that is the actual medallion for the Florida East Coast Railway. The DuPont family built those buildings once they obtained the FEC railroad from Flagler after his death. They're called triplets now, and they are dormitories for some of the Flagler students. Now, the original office building for the rail line was over here at San Sebastian Winery,